All right, testing 1, 2, 3. Today I'm going to talk and try to control the form of my expression concerning secrets and keepers. I'll call it that, I think. And this is like especially for the new. I've gotten a bunch of new subs. I don't know who they are. And just to save anyone the trouble of going through my personal videos to hear this type of story, I thought I would orate it again because the topic keeps rearing its head no matter how much I heal and feel satisfied with my life given, that situation and everything else like that. This time I'm going to talk about it again because it comes up as an issue. Okay, so I was born and given up for adoption right at birth. My mother didn't want me. I was a breech birth, her second breech birth, which I found out later. And I may even be a clone of my original baby's body. That's a fact. I have a document and some stories about it. So I'm either the original one that popped out of her, or they cloned me right away after that, and the original baby didn't make it. That's a possibility. So anyway, I was adopted, and it was supposed to be a secret. I believe my father would have been happy if my mother never told me as a little 2-year-old, which I kind of figured it out. But I think, like, they divorced when I was 5, and I think some of they've died, so I can't ask them. But I think some of their arguments had something to do with, that it was supposed to be a secret, and I know that it was supposed to be a secret that I even was adopted, and I know that because a couple years ago I spoke to the attorney who handled my adoption. He was a family friend. I called him up. I'd never spoken to him before. I found his name and called him up about 3 or 4 years ago. He was 98 years old. When his wife answered the phone, I didn't even know if it was the right number. But when she answered the phone, I told her who I was. She goes, "Oh, he'll be so glad to talk to you." So when we spoke, which I recorded some of the video, I taped it, he said, "When did you find out you were adopted?" And that's when I had it confirmed that I wasn't supposed to know. So this is the first secret. And as an adoptee who was supposed to have the secrecy about it, many states in the United States still have a policy of what they call closed records. Some states have open records. So if you were adopted when you turn 18, you can apply to get your real true birth certificate in some states, but not California. And in the 80s, when I was in my 20s and I did the search for my natural parents, the adoption records were sealed, and there was a group called Alma that helped adopt these search, and we had a mole, if you want to call her that, who worked in the Hall of Records in Sacramento, who snuck inside and got some records for me. If it wasn't for that lady who did that and sent me what she sent me in the mail in 1982 or whatever it was, 83, I wouldn't know what I know now, and I wouldn't have been able to continue to conduct my search with very much success. So there was a day when I received the copies of these also altered birth certificates of my birth mother, who it turned out she was adopted as well as a child. Okay, so I'm a second generation adoptee. So I hope the listener understands the level of secrecy and the level of drama that occurs in those of us who don't have our family tree available to us. We don't know our true genetic relatives. Okay, we don't. I grew up with, you go to someone's Christmas party or Thanksgiving and everyone brings out their family tree album. You look at other families all your life and people look alike, and the only entity I did meet my birth mother later and my sister. Very much fun to look at someone that resembled me. But my son is the only one that I've been able to live with who has my bloodlines. So, those of you that think bloodlines are so freaking important, there are millions of us who will never know our true parents. Why? Is it bad karma? Is it just the policy of Earth to have secrets? And of course we know why secrets are kept. And then what about the karma of those of us who defy the secrecy? You know? Recently I called the adoption agency, which is called Vista Del Mar. It's located in Los Angeles, California. Back in the 50s, when they managed my adoption, Vista Del Mar was primarily a Jewish-run organization that served the middle-class families, especially of the greater Los Angeles area and especially of the San Fernando Valley. The San Fernando Valley in the 50s was mainly settled by, I could show you a record, it was like 49% Jewish related people that settled and bought properties and developed homes and everything in the San Fernando Valley. So it's very much a Jewish thing. And the attorney told me that, well, genetic engineering happened to me, but he said that I am Jewish. Anyway, let me not go to details. I just wanted to talk about what happens when you, as a human being, are deprived of knowing something as simple as what happened to your father, what happened to your mother, who were they, what were their names, what about your grandparents, okay? Things like that. And so I was fortunate in the 80s to have had help, because my mother, who adopted me, she had a lot of sympathy with wanting to know your real parents. She had emotional sympathy for that. So she helped me get my records, which were sealed. And even the adoption agency wasn't supposed to give me them, but the woman who worked there in the 80s was kind enough. My mother wrote a formal letter requesting the information, and so did I. Her name was Ellie Schnitzer in the 80s. And we had a conversation, me and Ellie. Now, here's the part that, to this day, I'm speaking to a woman, who has a file cabinet with my personal information in it that's secret from me. I'm calling her up and asking for that information. So she's saying to me, why do you want to know? And she was very nice. So she was getting a little profile on my emotional attitude. And she was in the rough position of having the job of keeping secret records on people that were now adults. Okay? So, with all due respect, what a job to have. Just like today, Peter the Insider, or whoever, has records on people that they don't have, and he is in the middleman position of keeping those records and disseminating the information in certain ways, whether or not yes or no, this or that. It's not an easy position to be in. Secrecy is sometimes necessary for a lot of reasons. However, when secrecy is being kept for the power joy of an organization, to the detriment of the people that really just want to know so they can get on with their life, then that's where the adoptees have a rant. You see, some of them anyway. Not all adoptees care to know. My parents did their best. They're my real mom and dad, the ones who adopted me. Spiritually, yeah, everything. Okay, but let me go back to the 80s. So when I first sought out my records and I had to call Ellie and talk to her, she asked me a question. She said, are you in therapy right now? And you know that, well, she obviously had sensitive information. She was afraid of how I was going to respond. So it just so happened I was. I said yes. She said to me, well, I think I'd feel more comfortable sending the information I have to your therapist first, so she can have a little, so she can see what's getting ready to happen when you read this. So she was afraid of my reaction. It felt like she had to protect my emotional mental health. Well, the response, and she was very nice about it, I mean, well, I hung up the phone and I called Robin, my therapist. My initial response was indignation and the whole 9 yards. And Robin also thought it was extreme. You know, in other words, I was being told that at the age of 23, if I find out these secrets, I might jump off a building or do something bad to myself. And I tried to tell Ellie, hey, you're not responsible for how I respond, you know, to this and everything. I did try to talk her into sending me these important documents about myself and my real parents and my whatever that she had. But she felt like she wanted to send it to Robin. So when I was calling Robin about it, you know, venting my reaction, Robin said to me, she goes, listen, it's tough, I don't agree with it. She goes, but just get the information. You'll feel your feelings along the way, but just do whatever it takes to get the information. Don't trip on the attitude of the holder of it, right? So I calmed down. Ellie sent her the documents, okay? And I loved Robin. I worked with her for 5 years. I didn't mind. I didn't mind her being the one to look at it. That wasn't the problem. I didn't want to be the first, you know, that wasn't the problem. The problem was this whole idea of people doubting others' integrity when they ask for something. And people being afraid that because they have the information, that they're somehow responsible for your reaction. No, you're not. You're not. You're not. If I would have been suicidal and jumped off the thing, it wouldn't have been anyone's responsibility. Now, Ellie was also sharing secret files. I don't know in her job. Okay, but let me go back to this. So she sent the papers to Robin, and I went to have my session. And I did primal therapy with Robin prior. And we had these soundproof rooms and everything. So when we came into a session, if we wanted to flip out and if we needed to emote physically in a loud manner, we had soundproof padded rooms that we could do that in. They were very nice. Anyhow, I go there for my session. Robin comes down and hands me the letter. She hadn't opened it, sweetheart. What a sweetie. She didn't open it. She said, I'll go upstairs. I'll give you 15 minutes. You can read it, and then I'll be back down and we can do the session. So she hadn't seen it. Now, for all you adoptees listening, you guys are the only people that know what a moment like this is like. And I always had, you know, physical reactions to finding out. I mean, pure joy, but in the form of, like, nervous, right? So I opened the letter, and there were 3 points on the letter that were pretty triggering. Those were the points that Ellie thought that I would, you know, freak out about. They were pretty triggering. One of the points in particular was that I had a sister before me, and she was a year old by a different father. That point was the one that my session took off on, because I felt the root of my jealousy was extremely developed in utero, because I knew, and I had had memories in utero already during those days, during primal therapy, they had come up. So my first so-called negative reaction, it's not even negative, but powerful reaction was because reading that, you know, like, oh, you get to keep my sister but not me, so blah, 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 blah. Anyway, the unconscious, subconscious psychology of myself was like rooted with this initial jealousy that she got to stay with Mom and I didn't. Later on, I found out, I was so glad I got adopted, because I found out what my life would have been like if I had it. Okay, so I went into that session, I flopped around like a spineless frickin' 4-month-old fetus on that one. Yeah, you know, it caused a reaction, big deal. The other 2 facts had to do with the word Comanche. Now, being told that my father's grandfather was so-called full-blooded Comanche. Now, when I read that, I was validated on the fact that I already knew that. I knew that when I was 15, but I didn't know I knew that. How did I know that? Comanche was a thing. I've told a story about my mother let me wear this silver bracelet on my upper arm in high school. We went to a jewelry store. This silver bracelet was a snake, a silver snake wrapped around my upper arm. I was so fond of that piece of jewelry, you know, I went to high school and I gave it a name. I called it Comanche. Now, of all the Indian tribes on the planet, you know, and of all the things, why would little me as a teenager name my snake Comanche in my jewelry, especially the snake? So memory was popping out right then, but I didn't know that, did I? So 9 or 10 years later, I'm reading that my birth father has Comanche. So that was fucking exciting. Come on. So anyway, there are other facts about it. Now, you know, ever since then, I was able to process the information just fine. Robin helped me when I continued on my search, which was very delicate because when I found my birth mother, finally, she didn't want to meet me. Now, here's a point. These agencies they'll go so far as to promise the mother that if she, okay, like my birth mother Julie didn't want to know about me later on. I have the transcripts of the interviews about this in my possession, the files. So Julie wanted to give me away. She trusted I'd get a good family, and she claimed at the time that she didn't want contact with me or to know what was become of me after that. And she claimed on paper, there it is, written, that she didn't feel attached to me because she disliked the father so much. Well, when I met her finally, she told me she had the best sex with him. And apparently she must have waited till they had a fight, and he denied paternity and he left town. Anyway, I've said that story in other videos. Okay, so in the 80s, I successfully busted open the secrecy around my adoption, and it was great. And you know, there's more to the story. All right, so here I am. I'm fine. You guys have no idea how good it feels in the cells of your body to find out who gave birth to you. Okay, you have no idea how good that feels. You have no idea. Some adoptees don't want to know, like my brother. He didn't want to know. He said he had an angry disposition, so he said I'd probably get pissed off and go scream at him if I found out, you know, which I thought was not too evolved, but that was him. You know, a lot of people don't know. I maybe shouldn't have done it because, you know, it offended my father later on, and, you know, etc. So anyway, so that's a little bit about secrecy. So the next thing, my birth father, Melvin Lee Dobro, like the guitar. By the way, my adoptive father's name is Elvin, and my birth father's name turned out to be Melvin. Just saying. His identity, what happened to him, is still somewhat unknown, and I've talked about that in other videos. But I did find out his name, Melvin Dobro. He was born November 14, 1932. And he joined the Army when he was 16 years old. He lived at 1726 Willow Drive in Fortuna, California in 1966, when I would have been 9 years old. He got arrested for DUI. I managed to get those unforbidden records from the Department of Motor Vehicles in the Bay Area, California one fine day. They gave me his address. Okay? If you look at Fortuna, California, I think it's a little bitty of an Air Force base there. But, well, anyway, I don't want to go on too much about him, but just to say, it's still secret, 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 secret. Okay, now, back in the 80s when I was searching for all the sources, I was often told, go to the Mormon library. The Mormons have records on every human being in the United States. And they would give it for free. I never got that far, but why didn't I, you know? I tried. I thought about it. You know, the Mormon library has everybody's records. Now, isn't that interesting? Because when, fast forward to me having an interest in getting my SSP records, and then communicating with Will and Jody, Johann Fritz, when he married Jody, it was no secret that they had a marriage ceremony with the Mormon church in the Mormon environment. And without being judgmental, you know, I thought that was, I still think it's very interesting given the associations between, and what are the associations between the top tier of religious groups like the LDS, Catholics, Jesuits, to these off-world groups like break away, anyway, there it is. So isn't that interesting? So now, okay, I said about the adoption thing, and I kept my emotions down about how insulting it is. Maybe I got karma, and so I got a life where, I'm not supposed to know. But I do want to say one thing for certain is that it's a very, very free feeling when you are adopted, because you're not obliged to any blood relative. I swear to God, you're on your own. And there's a lot of good things about not knowing your lineage. But that has been how me and a bunch of other people, I think James Caswell had a similar thing, I think Max Spears had a similar thing. A lot of us don't have a fucking family tree to brag about. So emotionally we have to deal with that, right? And we get a very observatory viewpoint of our life when we have no family tree and bloodline to look at, like everyone else does in the normal world. It's like it could have dropped me down from wherever, which apparently is what happened. So it's been a lot of fun to look up what other people are holding about me. That's a secret. Oh my God. You know what I mean? So when I did recently consult Will and Jody about getting my records, and they also feel like they're responsible a little bit to, respect the privacy and the delicacy of people finding out what their history is in the SSP. So I, as a person who just went through the story I told you, am confronted with another wall of secrecy with people who have a particular attitude, whatever that is, but allegedly they're holding information about my history, my personal history. Now, I know I'm not this body. I know all that. I'm great with all that. I'm not attached to my genetic identity or any other else. Well, I'm a little vain in the mirror, but other than that, I'm all good. So do I have to convince somebody who's afraid that I'll jump off a building when I find out something that I'll be okay and I won't jump off a building? What would that take? Do I need counseling and therapy after I find out what my SSP records might say? I have sources where I can get that. And I'm 67 years old. If I die tomorrow and all the rest of you don't know stuff, that's it. This is one of my last chances to, do this. It's a project and it's fun. Mysteries are fun to clear up. I'm a real healthy, emotionally healthy, positive person. I've been through so much crap, but just like the rest of you, I had to escape Hollywood. I got all kind of stories, but see, I don't feel them anymore because I've been therapizing myself since I was in my 20s. Once you learn how to feel your feelings, get to the bottom of them, and you can do that on your own, you're good, right? So I worked with people, and I still do, but I'm good. I'm about as emotionally healthy as I feel like I am. It's like I don't need the kind of therapy that someone might need who's the first time receiving information. When in the 80s I started this, I was a fucking basket case. I was doing primal therapy. If you know Art Janoff's work, you'll understand the depth of therapy I was doing back then. And even then, I couldn't feel everything. When I went to find my birth mother for the first time, I was shaken. I took my best friend with me. So emotionally I went through that in the 80s with her. Okay, so come on. So I'm a good candidate for, just tell me this shit. Just fucking tell me. I can handle it, right? And when I spoke to Will and Jody on the phone about it, and I'm making this a long video, I'll try to keep it at under a half hour, they were worried about how I would handle it because other clients have had issues. So I respect that now. And yet they never asked me a single question about my history or anything, and I didn't expect them to look on my YouTube channel and listen to my stories, okay? So I'm making this video now just to reiterate it. Once again, I've done my homework, I can handle it. If I go get my records, I understand it's a delicate thing. If it puts me in a state of shock, hey, this is great, I live alone, I don't have to answer to anyone. I can afford to stay in bed for all week if I want, come out to eat, don't matter, I got friends, it's all good. So I just want to say that it's a difficult thing to hold records and keep secrets for others and then feel responsible for how they respond. But you're not on a soul level. Don't worry, you're not. If someone asks for information that you have, they have given you permission to release it, and you have gotten permission to let go of responsibility for how they respond to it. I mean that, okay? And, you know, trust me, it's hard. It's like being a doctor. You know, if you're a doctor, you do surgery and the person dies, you're like, oh, shit. You do your best, you know. So anyway, I want to say that, and if I do seek out further information that's factual, that's about records and stuff like that, I love to talk about it. You know, that's why I made the videos. And in the 80s, after I had successful finding my mother against all odds and finding a mother that she didn't want to see me, it took me 1.5 years to work to where I convinced her to meet me at a restaurant. And I say the word convinced, that's not how it went. Can you imagine that? She rejects you at the beginning. You find her 23 years later, she'll want to see you. When I went in front of the group Alma, you know, because we would meet once a month, and if anyone found their birth family, they got to stand up in front of everybody and tell how wonderful their reunion was. I did not have a reunion story like that. Can you imagine how that would feel? You get up, well, I found my mother, she didn't want to find me. You know, people were sympathetic. Anyway, that was then, and I've been I've been processing my life ever since, deep enough that I can sit here and say that, okay? 26 minutes. So I just want to mention that, you know, it's a really hard call to make. I do have respect for the sensitivities of the holders of the records, but in my case, if you're all listening, that's a little bit of my history, summed up in a half hour, just in case you wonder if I'll be able to handle finding out about my lineage that's supposed to be secret. Okay, thank you, bye. Oh, thing won't turn on.